fish was one of the 5 strategic commodities that needed to be protected and safeguarded. And then they came up and endorsed what was called the NEPAD Action Plan for the Development of African Fisheries and Aquaculture. Within the concept of CADAP, we already talked about CADAP in the morning. And then the action plan describes investment areas broadly into 3 areas. One is improving the management of natural fish stocks. Secondly is developing aquaculture production. And third is enhancing fish trade in domestic, regional, and global markets. And within the cross-cutting investments, focusing on developing environmental safeguards for the expansion of aquaculture and improving management of the wild fish stocks. And this was followed by the first Conference of African Ministers of Fisheries and Aquaculture, where they specifically made a request to development finance institutions, particularly the African Development Bank, and we are glad that today we are co-hosting this session with African Development Bank to specifically review their funding portfolios and increase allocations to fisheries sector investments, including sustainable aquaculture development within the CADAP framework. And then the second Conference of African Ministers came up with the Continental Policy Framework. Again, one of the 7 objectives is to facilitate advocacy for increasing investments in fisheries and aquaculture sector. However, the question is, how do we ensure that we achieve returns on the investment? And I think it is important for us to think through this by maximizing the short and medium-term impacts whilst leveraging on long-term actions and investments by private sector. So we have a very strong panel of experts who are going to make short presentations, but we hope that because this is an interactive session, we'll ensure that we have discussions from the floor. So our first presentation is going to be made by Dr. Ahmad Khan. I think we saw him yesterday. He introduced himself. He's one of the co-founders of this event and also the overall TBI. So let me call upon Dr. Ahmad Khan, who works for the African Development Bank Group, to give us a lead presentation. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Maybe before I start, I will be happy to share with you all some of the innovative financing instruments we have at the bank, the AFAWA program, and maybe a short video just to set the tone for this session.
Even though Africa has the highest percentage of women entrepreneurs in the world, there's an estimated $42 billion financing gap for women leaders to grow their businesses. The African Development Bank's Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa initiative, or AFAWA, is helping to close that gap. AFAWA's new Women Entrepreneurship Enablers program targets organizations training Africa's women-led businesses to boost their business savvy and how to access financing through AFAWA's programs. The first group of selected women entrepreneurship enablers received up to $250,000 each to accelerate their training programs and increase capacity to reach more African women entrepreneurs. Let's meet them. Africa Women Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum, South Africa. Founder Irene Ochem and Awif assist women-owned small businesses by providing knowledge, practical skills, resources, and valuable connections with over 2,000 course graduates to date. Entrepreneurium, Rwanda. Founder Christine Gilili and Entrepreneurium operates in 13 African countries. They have supported over 3,000 women entrepreneurs. Innovations aiming to impact 10 million people. Creative Space Startups, Nigeria. Director Grace Oluchi and Creative Space Startups runs an accelerator program targeted at building the capacity of 120 women-led small and medium enterprises in Cameroon and Nigeria. E for Impact, Kenya. Flavian Changju and E for Impact trains impact-driven entrepreneurs in Africa and Middle East to leverage the growth of their businesses, supporting over 2,000 women entrepreneurs to date. Transformational Business Network Africa, Kenya and Uganda, Jacob Zikusoka and TBN support early and growth stage women entrepreneurs to scale their businesses and aims to help 150 businesses in the year 2022. Grasa Machel Trust, South Africa. CEO Melissa Mugenyi and Grasa Machel Trust ensures that women remain Africa's development top priority, promoting their leadership in the economic, social, and political development of Africa, and has directly impacted 14,665 women entrepreneurs. Women in Africa, Nigeria. Hafsat Abiola and Women in Africa work in all African countries, supporting African women with training and mentoring programs that are determined to impact 30,000 women entrepreneurs by 2024. AFAWA knows partnerships with these women entrepreneurship enablers are key to preparing more of Africa's women business leaders to access the financing that can transform African economies. AFAWA is on the lookout for more qualified organizations that focus on training Africa's women entrepreneurs to join the Women Entrepreneurship Enablers Initiative. Have you got what it takes to empower Africa's women-led businesses? Learn more at www.afdb.org/afawa.
So that was just an inspiration. And the good news is there is actually a call that ends this week. So if we're ready, together with our fishnet and other cooperatives, I'm sure we can put together an application. So maybe I can get to my slides next, please. The slides? Oh, okay. The PowerPoint slides. Here we go. Next one, please. The green one? Perfect. So I want to come back to the blue economy and maybe give an overview of what we do as a flagship in Feed Africa, but more so importantly, what does the blue economy means to the continent? As we all know, the African Development Bank Group has 5 priority areas, and the blue economy is actually complementary to all of its priorities, whether we talk about renewable energy in terms of tidal wave, or we're talking about fisheries and aquaculture, which is the basis of our conversation here this week, or industrialize Africa in terms of soft and hard infrastructure, not to mention trade, connectivity, e-commerce, as well as quality of life, well-being, and resilience. So these are the fundamentals of the blue economy, but our focus in the blue economy is on fisheries, Feed Africa. And it's interesting to also say that this program is highly complementary to the African Union Blue Economy agenda. Here we go. I often get this from my colleagues at the bank. Why do we talk about fish when we talk about blue economy? And I'm sure most of you have talked about so many competing interests in the blue economy space. Fish is probably the most impactful sector in the blue economy. And so we as a bank want to promote that because of its importance to small-scale fisheries, but more so importantly because of the nexus, the food, livelihood, and trade nexus. There is no other sector in the blue economy that provides so much livelihood and provides so much impact in terms of human capacity development, not to mention cross-border trade, given the context of ACTFA, which was a conversation this morning. I decided to add this slide for my sister, Moniba, to make amends as to what the blue economy is, but also to engage Pratip, because I know there are some critical thinking around this, and I thought maybe I can give some pointers. What is the difference between the blue economy now and what we used to do before? As a bank, we focus on 5 things. I think it's important. I borrowed this slide from our colleagues in IED way back in the day. The first one is we're not only dealing with fisheries resources. Back in the day, we only talk about harvest, overexploitation, and now we have overfishing. But as part of this blue economy thinking, we also think about non-extractive resources, mangroves, habitats. These are critical, and they become the foundation for one of the innovations that we have today to capture these non-consumptive services as part of those ecosystem services that needs to be protected, needs to be preserved, and it also builds climate resilience. So that's the first one. The second one is we are also moving away from a regulatory framework where you have command and control. We are giving more empowerment to communities to be part of that governance framework. We are giving more opportunities to market-based incentives. And these all combined together provide a suite of instruments that are quite important in terms of governance. So we're moving away from management to governance. So I think that's quite crucial. Given the transboundary nature of fish, it's also quite important to give some room for transboundary governance, especially in the context of SADC, for instance, or COMESA, or ECOWAS. The third one is financial instruments, which is the basis of this conversation. So now we're thinking about innovative financing instruments, not the usual loans and grants, but things that are quite innovative. I'm sure today you get to hear more. And earlier on, I presented the AFOA program, which is really there to empower women, especially within the entrepreneurship space. The fourth one, which I will challenge my legal colleagues to actually look into, is areas beyond national jurisdiction. This, for me, I think is the area where Africa needs to prompt its capacity to make sure that most of the resources that are coming away in terms of biotechnology, in terms of pharmaceuticals, they need to have the capacity to be able to make laws, legal framework, partnership arrangements, and whatever it takes. Otherwise, it's gonna be taken just like the capture fisheries, far away and gone. The last one is capacity, technology transfer. We don't have the technology to tap into some of these resources, so we need to partner, we need to build our skills. And this brings us to innovation. How can we develop innovative tools, infrastructure, so we are at least protecting the resources that we have for current and future generations? So as a bank, we have multiple entry points, but the focus for us in Feed Africa is the fish chain, which is at the center of this chart. So within the fish chain, the interventions could be anywhere, from ecosystems conservation, to raw material supply, to harvesting, to post-harvest, to culture, hatchery development, feed formulation, not to mention processing, infrastructure relating to cold rooms, as well as branding, and you can list it, nutrition. All of these are part of the fish chain, and they provide the elements for Feed Africa, they provide the elements for governments to invest in their communities. Beyond the fish chain, we can think about integrated approaches, whether we're looking at climate resilience, especially for small island developing states and large islands as well, or we're looking at fish processing nodes. There is a new concept of a blue port, blue fishing port. What does a blue fishing port entails? To what extent do they have all the pollution-related safeguards that is required that Rashid was talking about? How can we think about enabling institutions, enabling environment, policy framework, fiscal reforms when it comes to subsidies? And there's a whole lot more. But within this, we can also think about integrated coastal zone management, marine spatial planning, and the rest of the other tools that we need to make sure that the spaces are well utilized and there is conformity in terms of the different actors and players. This is my most exciting slide. No pictures, please. So, no pictures, no pictures. So the colors in green are current programs. These are projects that have been implemented. They are in millions of dollars. And those in amber are indicative. That's why you don't have to take pictures. They might change. They might get bigger. They might get smaller. But the idea is that we're having a lot of requests from governments, from communities, in terms of what they want to do. So where we sit at our vantage point, we're seeing a lot of interest in small-scale fisheries. And here we find that there are multiple instruments for the interventions that are out there. So for instance, in Seychelles, they were more interested in support to SMEs in the blue economy space. Through the Fund for African Private Sector Assistance, FAPA, we're able to provide some grants, about $500,000 or so, to support small and medium enterprises. In Cote d'Ivoire, they were interested in developing an investment plan focused on the blue economy. So what they requested for was PPF, Project Preparation Fund, for $1 million. And that $1 million helped with all the necessary environmental safeguards, the necessary studies, the feasibility study, the rate of return on investment. And with that 1 million, we're able to prepare the project. That PPF is under implementation as we speak, and the investment program is planned for next year. And within that PPF, we expect to find an investment platform, different investment plans for different sectors, and a multi-sectoral implementation framework. We have done similar work in Cabo Verde. In Cabo Verde, because it's a medium income country, we have what is called the MIC grant, medium income country grants. These are about 1 million to 5 million, dedicated to help medium income countries to develop the capacity they need so they can grow. In others, we have integrated different types of funds. For instance, in Uganda, DRC, we're able to work with NELSCA, which is a regional body, to look at fisheries and water resource management. The resources to DRC was a grant, about 6 million. The one in Uganda was a loan, about 10 million. And then we're able to do some co-financing with Jeff for another extra 6 million. So resource mobilization is one of our strengths. In places where we may not be able to provide all the resources, we work with our partners, other DFIs, and other MDBs to see whether we can provide the allocated resources to support our regional member countries. We also have portfolios that are not within governments, non-sovereign operations. With these, we do have debt servicing. Sometimes we look at risk guarantees, partial risk guarantees. Sometimes we're looking at equity participation. So all of these are tools and financial instruments that help, depending on the nature of the enterprise, depending on the size of the enterprise. Now, given that small-scale fisheries are very much useful in communities where the threshold that we're talking about is too high, we are now working on instruments that are more catered towards SMEs. And to this, maybe during the next meeting, I will give you more details because these products are under construction as we speak. This is an inspirational slide, and I think this will help lay the foundation for my colleague Alex talk. So we don't only work within countries, we also work across regions. As the DG said yesterday, the Regional Integration Strategy Framework is a good way to promote regional integration, regional economic development across countries. So with fish, which means a lot to different people, whether as a natural resource that needs to be conserved, whether as food, or whether as a commodity, the Regional Economic Communities RECs provides a useful framework, not only for food, as fish as food, but also fish as a commodity for cross-border trade. So in this particular context, you can think about all the different large marine ecosystems. Each large marine ecosystem corresponds to at least one REC. So here we're now working with the different RECs to see whether we can support them in their regional implementation programs, as well as to support national programs to be able to deal with community-based interventions. Now, I often say fisheries is very important. We've talked about the small-scale dimension alone, but there's another part to it. It's a bankable commodity. As Rashid said yesterday, it's the only commodity that you can have for perpetuity. So with that, it's not surprising, actually, culturally, and I'm sure my brother here from Senegal will attest to it. Every CFA note you take, I don't have my wallet with me. I think I do, actually. Let me look. Every CFA note you take has a fish on it. Why? It's a social emblem. It's perpetuity, but it's also something that we need to cherish, protect, and preserve. And it's not just in West Africa. My brother is here on Friday from Malawi. Every kwacha has a chambo on it. So these are our heritage. We need to preserve them. We need to protect them. We need to utilize them. And I think the bank is ready to partner with all of us to make it happen. That's my last slide. I took this photo from Pavine. Thanks for indulging me in my food porn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad. As he has said that the bank works in partnership with other institutions, including international development institutions, but also inter-regional, intergovernment organizations. And therefore, I'd like to call upon Ms. Anna Menezes. I think she could be online. Anna, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Anna works for FAO. She's in transiting to Rome, I think in the airport or somewhere. So over to you, Anna. Please introduce yourself a bit, then make your presentation.
Thank you so much, my brother Lawrence, and thank you to the organizers and especially to the Africa Development Bank for giving FAO this space. Yesterday we have said, or someone have said, that aquaculture is the future to close the gap of the demand for aquatic foods. I would like to take you through some of the experience in Sub-Saharan Africa, particularly in Zambia, with the experience and cooperation with the FDB. Financial resources from both public and private purchase are needed to remove the traditional impediments for the aquaculture development, and that we know that is inadequate public basic aquaculture infrastructure, persistent farmers' limited ability to produce or otherwise access good quality inputs, primarily seeds and feeds, many stakeholders' limited technical and managerial capacity, weak value chain development, poor input and output market linkages, poor governance of the sector, and climate change. Private investment, regardless of the business size, will be the key. Private investments imply easy access to financial services, including bank loans, and other innovative forms, as my brother Ken have just said. They are critical for improving farm productivity, post-harvest practices, allowing smooth household cash flow, enabling better access to farms, promoting better management of risks, and creating more on-farm and off-farm employments, competitive profits for farmers and other stakeholders along the all.
Anna, we can't hear you. Anna, are you muted? We can't hear you. Anna, can you hear me? Yeah, Ajay, I'm sending a message.
Anna, we can't hear you.
Anna, we can't hear you. Do you hear us? Please. Say help. I suppose she has finished her presentation or we have lost her. Anyway. Anna, can you hear us by any chance? Maybe not. Okay, maybe when she comes back here, we can further engage her. At this point, I think Ahmad has mentioned about some of the practical programs which they have in linking the bank with regional integration institutions. And I think we have a colleague from the SADC, Dr. Alex. Would you please make a short presentation on some of the examples where the bank is linking with the regional integration process? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity and colleagues to be together today, this morning. I'm not sure if my presentation will be flashed there. What I've realized is that each time we are talking about investment, the room where you are is always full and people are very quiet. Basically, it is because I think finance is still a challenge in our sector. And it is important that we sort out this problem as a region. And I think Ahmed made my presentation very easy because he has talked about how African Development Bank is supporting regional bodies to promote fisheries within the blue economic context. Will my slide come through? Maybe. It's there? I sent them and there was okay, then I'll talk. I sent them, there was a response. Yeah. Yeah, so the African Development Bank is supporting a regional program. This regional program is called the Profish Brew project, which is being implemented in the SADC region. And we are concentrating our activities really in 7 countries: Democratic Republic of Congo, United Republic of Tanzania, Comoros, Madagascar. We're also in Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. Of course, these will be the core countries, but we'll also move into all the 16 member countries. And remember, Ahmed mentioned that we are moving from management to governance, and that's why the project is called the Program for Improving Fisheries Governance and Blue Economy Trade Corridors in the SADC region. And yesterday, we were not talking about climate change. I think 3 key important points came through, that if we have to build resilience in the fishery sector, we have to talk about markets, we have to talk about trade, and we have to talk about finance. So this project, the Pro-Fish Brew, is actually mainly, trying to promote sustainable fisheries management within our transboundary water bodies. I think this has already been alluded to, and also making sure that we have trade, within our region. And we are working together with several institutions who are our partners. One of them is the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization. We are working with WWF, basically Mozambique. We're also working with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And we are working also with the World Fish. This project has got 3 mainly components. Now, the first one, of course, is improving collaborative governance of transboundary fisheries and genetic resources. The other one is on policy harmonization and trade, and then building climate resilience and institutional adaptability to shocks. Now, within this last component, we have the trust fund. And this trust fund is slightly, just less than $1 million US dollars. And why is it so? Because we see that the sector is actually very vulnerable to climate change and other external shocks. We see that the emerging small and medium enterprises, actually they fail to run their business, not because they don't want to run them, but maybe they lack financial resources and also skills for them to venture into that. They may also sometimes may not be aware of the networks that are there. And actually, we may have limited access to financial products and the support services. So this fund is trying to support, and we are looking for a partner that we can work with in trying to make sure that we come up with a sustainability plan, because this fund has to be sustainable. I know yesterday we were talking about various financial instruments, but for us in the region, we see that this fund has to be sustainable. But what is more important is that we have to develop the people that are supposed to be there, and we must have the business development services. And then identify the innovative finance products that we can disperse to those people. Then also, we need to make sure that, as I mentioned, in the sustainable plan, it has to be replenished. So this fund has to be replenished. The other innovation we are working on, Ahmad talked about the entry points, climate resilience, also talked about fish processing nodes. One of the innovative aspects that we are working on is on the processing node, where we're trying to support cooperatives, we're trying to support organizations in terms of cold chain facilities. Because we realize that we are losing a lot of fish, post-harvest losses. Of course, this can be described in 3 terms. We have biological losses, we have economic losses, and we have, of course, also the actual physical losses. So we need to work with these cooperatives and make sure that we reduce the post-harvest losses, we increase the income of the people who are involved in there, and we increase also the food consumption. And we need also to work with leaders, as the theme talks about today. Like for example, in Tanzania, I think for those who are from Tanzania, are there people from Tanzania here? Yes. So just 8 days ago, we were with the former Prime Minister of of Tanzania, Mr. Minzu Pindu, who's doing great working with communities and also showing that he's a leader in aquaculture and linking them to the market. And we would like to work with those cooperatives to make sure that we develop the cold chain facility, because if we develop the cold chain facility, then we are going to also promote trade. Remember, yesterday as we were talking about trade came out as an important aspect. And there are cooperatives there. And yesterday there was an issue where people were talking about do cooperatives work and so on. There are cooperatives there. I think the model in Tanzania is the similar model in Zambia, what we've realized, where cooperatives, everyone who is in this cooperative has got a fish pond, has got 2 ponds or so on. In Zambia, you have got a cage. I think that works. You cannot have 1 pond, then you have got 25 members. What brings to the cooperative, what brings to the organization are the benefits that the members will benefit or get at the end of the day. Not just say, come together and so on. In fact, in Zambia, we didn't create a cooperative, themselves created themselves. What we just provided is finance to individuals, but clustered them and themselves formed a cooperative. I think that model can work, but as Miran mentioned this morning, it can work in Tanzania, it can work in Zambia, it may not work maybe in Madagascar. So in this processing value chain, we want to do a lot of training. We need to support in terms of equipment. Like in Tanzania, I think what they have the building, but they don't have the equipment. So that equipment can easily be facilitated. And also the trucks and so on to make sure that the cold chain is complete. We are talking about trade. For us to make sure that trade is within the region, we must make sure that we harmonize the standards. Each country has got its own standards, but we must harmonize them so that we facilitate trade. And that's one of the concepts that UNIDO is going to support us and make sure that we harmonize these standards and work with the principle of one-stop border post. I think most countries have tried to do that, and what we have to do is to try to move in and complete when it comes to fish and fishery products. Very soon, the 2 countries, I think the Republic of Malawi and Republic of Zambia, they will be soon opening the Mwami border post, which is complete, and what we need is to support in terms of equipment that goes in there. The other thing that we have to do is, in terms of marketing, is the e-commerce. Various countries have their own country, platforms that they are utilizing. But for us, we want to work together and make sure that we have a regional, e-commerce program so that you can sell your product across within the region. I was just talking to my colleague from Malawi. Is he here? Oh, yes, Patrick. Who they have developed the platform, and we are trying to see how many countries have these platforms, or what we need to do is to have one and then integrate to this system. So this is what I had. Thank you very much, Chair, and I look forward to engaging with you privately and also officially so that we can move this sector together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alex, for that experience from the SADC region. Now, from the map that Dr. Khan showed us, I think it was very clear that the partnership built on the regional institutions, like the case of SADC, but they are aligning at the continental level within the framework of the priorities that the continent has defined. And one of those is about the African blue economy strategy. Now, I would like to call upon online Dr. Karani. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, Lawrence, I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, Patrick, please go ahead and introduce yourself and make your presentation.
Right. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Chair. On behalf of African Union, I'm standing in for Dr. Mohamed Saise, who should have been able to make this presentation, but he fell up. And he humbly conveys his greetings from the AU Commissioner, Madam Ambassador Sako, and the Director of AU IBA, Dr. Nick Nikwa. And therefore, I'll be making my presentation, actually making excerpts from the Africa Blue Economy Strategy that was done. I'm trying to share my slides, but I see there is a problem on your side. Can you disable or can you enable my slides to share my slides from here, or you can project it? Oh, yeah. Okay. Share. All right. Are you able to see my slides on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just put it in the presentation mode. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that okay now?
Yeah, it is okay.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be very brief, actually, as I said before. I'm just making some kind of highlights from the Africa Blue Economy Strategy. But to the interest of this audience, what is triggered our kind of insights and thoughts is like to see in the concept of the blue economy, which is emerging as a frontier for development, a new paradigm. There are a number of areas we look at of interest, especially from the business side and social innovation, that what will really be driving this process in the context of blue economy. And I think what emerges there standing out is an area of collaboration. There needs to be more collaborative effort among the institutions in the continent, as just been mentioned earlier by Ahmed, and also the following speakers have already highlighted that if this is done quite correctively, then we see a lot of issues on the social transformation, economic development that relates to environmental management as kind of key for the process to be moved forward. And therefore, we see like from the African Blue Economy Strategy, it is considered to secure long-term business and social innovation over short-term benefits, social transformation perspectives in maritime, as well as in the strategic goals for interventions that require policy plans for effective development. And this should be more on institutional cooperation, which is inclusive and building up on trust for small-scale fishers, traders, transporters, value chain, among others. The African Blue Economy Strategy had very key thematic areas which were pegged on 5 sectors, because it is in our view that the blue economy sectors are emerging more on a very sectoral level, but in piecemeal. But so far, the key areas of concern or of interest would be 1, on fisheries, aquaculture, conservation, sustainable aquatic ecosystems, shipping, transportation, trade, ports, maritime security, safety, and enforcement, coastal maritime tourism, climate change, resiliency, marine ecosystems, environment, infrastructure, sustainable energy, mineral resources, innovative industries, and of course, policies, institutional governance, employment, job creation, poverty eradication, and innovative financing. Therefore, there are quite a number of areas that one can look at each very specific area of interest. If you look at what can oceans provide in terms of the seafood, in terms of minerals, it has been mentioned about energy, and also we look at the fresh water, what can be provided. All this in each one of those provisions from the blue economy side has got a business angle that also pegs onto the social entrepreneurship. You look at the industry, which drives growth, and then some of the institutional coordination aspects relating to capacity building, among others. So this slide basically tries to bring in together some of the very key fundamental areas of interest for business with an angle for social transformation based on social innovation. Now, the business and innovation in the blue economy context, of course, I've mentioned earlier, just to highlight a few, like food security is key. And of course, looking at the climate change mitigation areas, and also in the fish habitat ecosystem areas, there are areas of key concern. But of course, tourism, as I'll highlight later also, it emerges as an area of key interest for business from the blue economy point of view. Of course, not forgetting about trade. Now, based on the findings of the Africa Blue Economy Strategy, we try to identify, building up from the, using the 2018 baseline, with projections to 2030 up to 2063, which is the main AU agenda that the Africa we want, which is inclusive. You find that in the key sectors I've mentioned, what are emerging as potential opportunities for business development is that what stands out as a key area of interest is that you'll find in the coastal tourism stands out quite significantly, followed by oil and gas exploration, and then you have minerals. And of course, we have the blue carbon and ecosystem, mangroves have been mentioned, seagrass, among others, that have potential for business opportunities development. Now, just to give you a few highlights in terms of the value of dollars, is that in 2018, you will find that the blue economy alone considered to generate about $299 billion. With the projection to 2030, this would grow to around $405 billion. Then up to 20, of course, these are conservative numbers, so we didn't want to exaggerate or give you something that is overwhelming. But in 2063, we estimate a value of about $576 billion from the very key sectors I've just mentioned. There are many more other sectors, of course, that will add to these contributions. But what about in terms of the job creations? Because employment has been significantly issue of concern to African Union member countries or member states. In these key sectors, if you look at the 2018, there were about 49 million jobs created from the blue economy. Projection to 2030 shows there will be about 57 million jobs created, and then up to 2063, another maybe 78 million jobs. This is quite significant contribution in a continent that employment has become really an issue of concern. Graduates leaving universities, they have got no jobs. We have technical schools. So there is potential, a pool of skills, but cannot be optimized or utilized due to lack of jobs. Therefore, the cross-cutting areas, which also will be of significance, is we need to look at the information, the knowledge, and the communication systems. We have the blue economy emerging markets, among others. If we have the necessary capacity, as well as which is policies that are coherent to enhance coordination and identify opportunity areas for funding. This has already been highlighted by the previous speakers that remain key to promoting the blue economy. The approach that will be of relevance to business and social innovation is that if you look at the blue economy sectors I've just mentioned, each one of them has significant component that has a business angle and also links to a social transformation. For example, if you look at marine, fisheries, and aquaculture, huge potential opportunities for both coastal and inland communities. Before, as it was said, blue economy fisheries was considered just to be the key sector for blue economy, but now this has changed the paradigm that you are not only looking at the coastal areas, but also you look at inland. Landlocked countries, the fish ponds can also add value, rivers among others. So just, this is kind of to give you the spread of how in each one of these components, if you're looking at the carbon sequestration, either from mangroves or either from seagrass, or either from waters, the oceans, among others, there are business opportunities. So how do we really harness these opportunities and put them into practical applications or perspectives? So far, some of these are still very theoretical, but we have also key drivers of change. We realize the African population at the moment is just about 1 billion people. This is growing at 2.5% per annum. By 2063, the population will be about 3 billion. So where there are people, definitely you cannot miss a market opportunity, or you can never fail to have a business. So you look at the population of Africa alone provides that space for business growth, business development, among others. But of course, this also relates to the social transformation. There are many more other key drivers. We'll share the slides for you to look at climate change opportunities as well as key areas for drivers for blue economy growth. Now, we talk so much of the theory, but now we need to be more practical. How do we make this from the theory of the blue economy in the practical application? For example, we talked about jobs. Are these jobs really inclusive? How do we create jobs that are inclusive of youth, women, gender balance? We talk of the ecotourism. We talk of the green jobs. So these slides here has been shared, I think, from the UN, among other institutions, ECA, they are also looking at this slide. We have been so much theoretical, but now let's make it more practical. As Ahmed has said, the investment flows, the portfolio they have is trying now to really result in some of the practical things, tangible results you can have on the ground. You've seen it from the presenter from Zambia, Malawi. Also, they've talked about the regional integration. The practical aspects, which seems to be more of a challenge. How do we actually bring in the theory of the blue economy to deliver tangible results? These are some of the challenges that we're experiencing, and we need to move forward in the context of accruing benefits that will contribute towards social transformation. And therefore, this slide basically provides some of the, seeking solutions for some of these challenges that we can address to have a self-sustaining blue economy growth or economy. Now, therefore, the challenges I've mentioned are quite diverse. You see them for yourself. Some of them are strategic, some of them are institutional, some of them are practical, some of them are technical, some of them are financial, limited opportunities in getting access to finance, among others, that curtails some of the business interest in the blue economy. And of course, lack of policies which are not coherent or consistent of the various institutional mandates for the blue economy growth. Therefore, in conclusion, I think that the fisheries aquaculture, in the context of blue economy, they need to have like a mainstreamed integrated approach. This framework will basically look into what are the business and social opportunities that can be addressed. And in the areas of environmental disasters, also we need to look into that, how they constrain the business growth or development. And then some of the areas that are more strategies to enable some of these institutions that can basically contribute to social transformation with the research and education, which are being paramount for the blue economy growth. Therefore, we see that more work needs to be done in terms of recommendation. We need to see how can we link the blue economy to business development and social transformation. There isn't really much data or information about this type of issues we are discussing now, but to have clear policy, they need to be informed by relevant, accurate data. So let's look at if African Development Bank is supporting some of these research programs, they need to look into like robust research support to research institutions that can generate data. This data will inform policy. This data will inform business plans. This data will inform planners, among others. So I think recommendations building up on the policy, as I said before, is that the key strategic areas we mentioned for interventions, for us in the blue economy, we look at the shipping, port development. We have talked of the green ports, among others. The ports need to be modernized. Fisheries and aquaculture need to be enhanced. The energy, unlock all the barriers for blue energy through various technology development and deployment to African member states. Mineral and oil and gas, we need to be more cautious that environmental ecosystem conservation issues are not compromised, that will affect the fisheries and so on. We need to have innovative industries. Coastal tourism, I've said, is key for most coastal areas, but also inland tourism along the rivers and some of the interesting features need to be promoted as well. The blue carbon, among other ecosystem services, is an area of interest, and this also needs to be really harnessed for business development as far as the blue economy is concerned. Therefore, I think from our end, this is the team, some of the faces there are very familiar to you. At the very far left is me. I worked on the blue economy, tourism, climate change, infrastructure, environment. Dr. Hashali from Namibia, he worked on fisheries. Dr. Asmaron worked on innovative industries, innovative and extractive industries, energy. Dr. Pierre Feller, university professor, Portsmouth University, team leader, and also very innovative in the blue economy drivers. And of course, to the far right is Mr. Serigne Diop from Senegal, who worked on maritime security, safety, among others. Therefore, Chairman Slons, leave it up to you that our aim here was just to highlight the Africa Blue Economy strategy. Of course, now Some of the discussions like needs to be updated, and in the part of the updating of the strategy is some of the issues which are emerging from this discussion is that we need to see how can this be integrated into the new revised Africa Blue Economy strategy that will be more informed, more comprehensive, and enhance outreach to the entire continent. Back to you, Chair Sloans, and thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Yeah, Patrick has mentioned a number of very important issues. I think first is that ensuring that investments do yield tangible returns. And secondly, that institutional arrangements are favorable to ensure that those investments do yield returns. But thirdly, very important, is the context of business and social innovations. I think dealing with funding from the African Development Bank often also raises a number of questions in countries, particularly this time that countries are worried about debt burden. But I think if we deal with these three issues, I think it'd be easier for us to borrow and be able to have returns. But for that to happen, we need social innovations and partnerships that are really innovative. And I think now we have wrapped up the segment of our session where we're dealing with inter-regional, intergovernmental organizations. And now we'll be moving on to partnerships at business, but also non-governmental organizations. Now, I would like to call upon Samantha, who is going to share with us experiences on how the partnerships with the NGOs can leverage to ensure that the investments that are coming into the sector are able to generate returns, but also ensure that the resource upon which governments would make a case for borrowing money are going to be sustainably managed. Over to you, Samantha.
Try and get this to work. Great, thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. And yeah, I wanted to share with you a little bit about the work that WWF is doing to support coastal communities across the Southwest Indian Ocean to secure cool blue food, we're calling it. So this is about catalyzing investment and innovation into fisheries supply chains and providing some climate-friendly cooling for ocean communities. And so this presentation actually could equally have fitted into the session before, but it's great to be up here with our partners. And I also hope that it really gives you a sense of how valuable partnerships are in terms of bringing different competencies together around a shared challenge. And so, you know, having the bank and SADC as partners, Finance Earth, our civil society organizations as partners, and then of course the communities on the ground that we work with. And so, you know, role of an organization like WWF in terms to bring those partners together from global and regional partnerships all the way down to really working in a meaningful way with coastal communities. And so we've heard quite a lot about the challenges facing communities, and particularly coastal communities who are so dependent on small-scale fisheries for food, and really how we kind of squandering some of the best food source that we have on the planet. And you know, particularly in terms of its nutrient-rich protein, and the significant loss of that through the seafood supply chain. And so some of the statistics are really quite alarming, in fact. Thank you. I'm moving the wrong thing. There we go. Thank you. I'm moving it on my laptop. Yeah, so the FAO statistics are kind of showing how a third of the of what is caught is in fact lost in the supply chain, and of course that represents a significant loss of food and nutrition and also the economic value of that loss. And so the issues around post-harvest loss are really significant, and it can happen in a number of places across the supply chain. So the first is at sea, and you'll see much of the work that we're doing is to support coastal communities to reduce the loss of catch at sea. And then, of course, when the catch is offloaded and passed on, if it's sold immediately, that has the least loss. But of course, if it's transported or sold or stored for a future buyer, if there aren't sufficient cold chain and storage facilities, leading to further loss of product. Of course, when it's in the marketplace, if there's no cold chain in the marketplace, or where it's stored at its final destination. So, oh goodness, I keep forgetting to move the slides, don't I? Okay, so this slide really is about showing you that this is a significant challenge in sub-Saharan Africa, but it's a shared challenge in many parts of the world, and it really takes place across the seafood supply chain, but really only a very small percentage of that is at the end consumer. So really, the importance of working with fishing communities to support post-harvest loss at sea when they're catching their catch, and then through the supply chain before it lands with the end consumer. So we're working then with coastal communities and the private sector to develop sustainable business models. So a lot of these projects have been trialed across the region and have really struggled. And so there's been a lot of lessons that have been learned. I think it's not actually that uncommon to see sort of abandoned freezers or ice machines in coastal communities along the East African coast. And so that, that has also really triggered us to ask the question, why? And so a lot of donor investment has gone into supporting coastal communities, but actually very little, if any, have actually translated into long-term sustainable businesses or been able to attract private sector finance to scale those up. And so it's been really exciting over the last 6 months, where we've been able to partner with Finance Earth and partner with other financial institutions and private sector players to really understand the business model that sits behind these investments. And so really meaningfully leveraging our donor funding and very well-meaning donor funding to put infrastructure and equipment into the communities, but not enough consideration to the business model and the financial analysis and the feasibility sitting behind some of those investments. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a taste. We've got quite a wide variety of investments across the region and in different contexts, which has also been really interesting to kind of learn and be able to share lessons between some of these projects. So these are just 3 examples where we're working with climate-friendly refrigeration. So we have solar ice flake machines in Songa Songa in Tanzania. I think we heard a little bit about some of the work that we're doing there yesterday. We also have solar power refrigeration work happening in Kilifi in Kenya, and solar ice machines in Toliara in Madagascar. And so then we also are working to support value addition and market development in a wide range of communities. And just to give you a sense of some of that, we're working in Lamu with the commodity interest group there and the beach management units to support the aggregation of seafood and value addition, including then refrigeration and supply chain development. And the same in Samanga in Tanzania, where recently developed with the community and with local government a marketplace and some preparation surfaces and things that can support health and safety and a way to aggregate product and increase the livelihoods of fishers in those communities. And so really what these projects do is they have all these triple benefits and of course increased revenues. And that is because for fishers there's an increased portion of their catch that they can sell. There's also increased value. And this is because there's increased quality of the product. Improved fisheries management, I think this is still, there are some big assumptions here that need to be tested, but in theory, by increasing the catch through reducing post-harvest loss, we can decrease the pressure on overexploited fish stocks. Of course, lower greenhouse gas emissions through using solar refrigeration, and the ice machines and the freezers are using climate-friendly refrigerants. And most importantly, the increase in food security through the reduction of post-harvest loss. And then I really just want to make the case here for some of the challenges that I think we've heard being raised in terms of then attracting private sector finance. The one aspect is really having sound feasibility and sound financial modeling sitting behind these businesses, strong business model and a business case for investment. But the reality is that working community by community or beach management by beach management, as beach management unit at least, as important and necessary as that is, in order for us to get over the transaction costs for an investor to come in, we will need to replicate and aggregate these across multiple projects. And I think that that's also been what's exciting about our ability to work across multiple countries and multiple communities at the same time, and have continental partnerships with the African Development Bank as an example. We're really able to bring that scale to some of this work. And so, and to think about how we've transitioned these small businesses from the kind of current model where there's high pressure on resources, high post-harvest loss, and then reduced revenues to the fishing community or to the fisher themselves, to a model where we can invest in solar-powered refrigeration. And by doing that then, so the sale of ice brings in revenues, investment when investment comes in, we have return from the sale of the ice products, and of course that then the reduction in post-harvest loss, increased nutrition, and increased sale of product for the small-scale fisher. And so just really wanted to close again with a really strong reminder that, without the relationships with the communities on the ground, without the civil society organization partners who come alongside those communities, connecting those up with the private sector in terms of investing in the logistics and the infrastructure and the supply of ice flake machines and refrigerations and freezers, without the private sector and public sector investors and governments enabling condition, it's not possible. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sam, for that presentation. Yes, it is indeed important to ensure that we have sound business practices and the modeling, and therefore at this point I would like to call upon Chris to share with us experiences on how they are supporting the fish-dependent communities to bring products into the markets. Over to you, Chris.
There we go, the slides are up. First of all, thank you very much, Chair, and indeed to the Congress for providing the opportunity for us to talk with you today. I want to change tack just a little bit and share with you a use case of some work that an organization called Abalobi does with fishing communities, a growing number of fishing communities in South Africa. And I trust that it will be a useful contribution to this panel discussion as it unfolds. I do also see in the room that some of the community members that we work with, and indeed also some of the partners and supporters are here today. I will do my best to represent the work that we all do together today. But please do feel free, any of you, to chip in afterwards if you feel there's anything that I've missed. Oh, let me go back one slide. Apologies. So to start off with, what is abalobi? And I'll start with the name. It has nothing to do with abalone. Abalobi is a word in one of the 11 official languages in South Africa that means fisher. Thankfully, it was a name chosen for the organization and the platform by fishers themselves. The platform, the technology platform, has its roots in a research project in the University of Cape Town. And the three co-founders originally wanted to call it, I think, the Information Management System for Small-Scale Fisheries in Southern Africa. So the IMSSFSA, and I'm eternally thankful to fishers for moving us away from that to abalobi. So what does abalobi do? Well, as an organization, we focus on delivering fisher-driven technologies and platforms that are inclusive. Through that, we aim to build fisher agency and to open up various communities for the fishing communities that we work with. Up on the screen right now, you can see some of the platforms that we've developed. Abalobi Fisher is a tool that fishers use not only to record key fisheries information that's important to them, it also offers them an opportunity to engage with that data, to share it amongst their community. They can use Abalobi Fisher as a tool to manage their business activities, the various costs and expenses that are associated with fishing activities or various other community activities that they're engaged with, including post-harvest work, for example, intertidal harvest, as well as things like fish cleaning and new opportunities around quality control. We've also developed a platform called Abalobi Monitor. This is essentially a tool that we developed specifically for communities around collection of fisheries data at a community level, and for them to be able to share that not only amongst their community or across a region, but obviously also with their stakeholders and partners. And then the Abalobi Marketplace, probably something that Abalobi is quite well known for. It's a digital marketplace that fishers, coastal product producers, and fishing communities themselves can engage in to play a more active role in value chains. So there are various different entry points for fishing communities, but I think the most important thing here to highlight is that tech literacy and access to smartphone devices, although initially was a challenge, is something that fishing communities are coming up with in innovative ways to deal with. And so we're supporting them in overcoming that barrier. It's something that we've learned together with fishing communities. And so that now enables them to have all of these different entry points that you see up on the screen, from using the technology for improvement and safety activities that they drive, all the way through to accessing financial services, for example. So now I want to dive into the use case that I mentioned originally, and that centers mostly around the Abalobi Marketplace and its deployment here in South Africa to start off with. So this was essentially the problem that we saw, and it hinged a lot on a disengaged society. So from a fisher perspective and a fishing community perspective, there really was very little way for them to participate in value chains. There's very little visibility for fishing communities, and quite often they were overpowered by market forces. And then from a market perspective, we did a little bit of work on trying to understand that as well. There was very little transparency, which meant that market players really had no way to meaningfully connect with fishing communities. And then as a result, they had no opportunities to really drive any sort of meaningful change. And so that led to us building the Abalobi Marketplace together with fishing communities. And this is a graphic representing what that looks like. Critical to the success of this model is that it includes all roles within a fishing community, from crew and their families through to, like I mentioned, the post-harvest workers, the product producers, the shore harvesters, and so forth. So Abalobi as a platform and as a digital marketplace only really works well when a fishing community is engaged in the process, as opposed to only individual fishers. To support that, we have also developed a range of different supporting tools. So key to the implementation of the marketplace is, for example, an e-learning platform where we can learn from fishing communities, but also potentially look at developing some skills that they require to better manage a cold chain, to deliver high quality product to a market. But it all comes back to the fishing community stories themselves. And so through the deployment of the marketplace and the technologies that we've built, we place great emphasis on really trying to understand fishing communities, where they're at and what the stories are that they want to share. And so essentially as a technology, it's a traceability platform, but that enables us to be able to tell these stories in an authentic way. And so every order, every product, every fish that moves through the platform is associated with a unique and dynamic story that the end user, the end consumer, the end buyer can engage in so that they can better understand the realities of small-scale fishes. So although it's really early days, we have observed a few changes that are starting to occur. And although really small in scale, we see great potential for this sort of work to continue to grow. And so this is a similar slide to the one you saw earlier, but it has some significant changes. So from a fisher perspective, there are early indications of improved financial well-being, more participation in value chains, and the ocean stewardship role that they play being increasingly recognized. And then again, we had a look at it from a market perspective as well. And there we saw an improved understanding of seasonal flows, the nature of small-scale fishing, a better connection to the fishing communities, and improved transparency in the way they engage in value chains. So to build on the previous slide, there are also various different indicators we're tracking. Deploying a marketplace like this and developing this sort of technology can have both positive and negative consequences. There are mistakes that you can make along the way. And I think we have made a few mistakes, definitely. But we'd like to be able to pick those up and then correct them. And so to be able to do that more efficiently, we've developed a range of different indicators you can see here that we track throughout the deployment of the marketplace and how we roll out the technology. Critically, the indicators track performance across the triple bottom line. So we're looking, of course, at ecological indicators, but more importantly at the social and financial indicators that are relevant to fishing communities as well. So now to scan out a little bit, to move a bit away from the use case and to look at, where would Abalobi like to go? How does it need to grow to be able to sustain itself and to build on these early proof points? So there are a few different layers that I'd like to quickly share, but not go into too much detail in. First of all, we need to grow within South Africa. We'd love to reach a point where the Abalobi marketplace sustains itself, but could also fund its own growth. So we're constantly looking to be able to include more fishing communities in the marketplace and to reach new markets within South Africa. And so we need to be able to maintain that momentum. Secondly, the technology itself, the platform, needs to be able to keep pace with changing contexts and realities that fishing communities face. And to be able to do that, we have to invest into technology development at Abalobi so that it can remain relevant in South Africa, but also be shared with partners beyond our borders. Third, we envisage supporting fishing communities outside of South Africa as they engage in platforms like the Abalobi marketplace in the same way as what fishing communities do here in South Africa. And then finally, we'd like to explore opportunities for potentially connecting these different marketplaces to each other. So just quickly unpacking layer one, this is what the operations look like currently here in South Africa. There are various different hubs in communities that have been established. I think, Sam mentioned a lot of the investments that have been made in cold chain and built infrastructure. We've tried to think of innovative ways that we can move around that. How can we deploy a cold chain so that it's quite nimble and can be adjusted and changed as a marketplace unfolds? And that's what we focus on in all of these various hubs. We then also have a hub in Cape Town where we aggregate some of the catch that comes in from fishing communities before it's moved along to buyers in and around the region. Then we're also exploring expanding into other markets. So in South Africa, most seafood is consumed actually in inland provinces. And so making small-scale fisher catch available there is something that, that we'd like to explore to build on that momentum. Importantly, though, we want to make sure that food security is maintained within fishing communities. The last thing that we'd want to do through deploying the abalone marketplace is to leave fishing communities bereft of the seafood protein that they have access to. And so we do try and balance these two. Then on to the second and third layer that I mentioned. Up on the screen right now, you can see, I think I don't know if I can actually move this forward. There we go. Now you can see all the circles. Thank you. The light blue dots, those are deployments of the abalone monitor platform that I mentioned earlier. I haven't gone too much into that today, but the tool that communities can use to collect community level data and share that back. Those are the deployments we've actively got going at the moment in Kenya and 2 sites in Madagascar, another one in the Comoros. The dark blue circles are where we're trialing together with fishing communities and indeed some of their partners how to deploy the abalone marketplace outside of our borders. And then all the yellow circles are the expressions of interests that are coming in from around the globe to better learn from what fishing communities have been able to achieve in South Africa and utilizing the platform, and to see if there is a use case for them to replicate that in their context. So that's it. I'll leave you at that. Like I said, I hope it was a useful contribution to the panel, and I look forward to the discussions that ensue.
Thank you, Chris, for that presentation. I think it's interesting that you've noticed that societies and markets are disengaged. I thought markets are driven by societies. Anyhow, where markets do fail, we need the role of government to come and make sure that the markets can work, particularly for the small producers and the low-income consumers. Now, at this point, I'd like to call upon Lisa to share with us experience from what government is doing to support that process. Lisa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I won't stand between you and lunch. I don't have any slides. I'll just talk through what I've got. Yes, so I'm from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. I'm in the aquaculture unit doing investment promotions. So some of the finance tools that we use within the South African context is our Aquaculture Development and Enhancement Program, also known as ADEP. And this is a funding tool that is an incentive grant that we provide to our farmers, where they are reimbursed with what they've put in. So as government, we're saying we're going to take the risk with you. Aquaculture is very costly in terms of equipment and putting in the first inputs. So we as government, it's administered by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, DTIC, and ourselves, and we give a reimbursement grant up to 20 million Rand. That equates to about 1.1 million USD. So this covers so the assets that we reimburse you in terms of the grant. So it covers machinery, equipment, tools, bulk infrastructure, owned land, feed, aquaculture feed, workboats, and for SMMEs we also cover mentorship. There's a sliding scale, and you can get up to about 45% back of your investment that you've put into your aquaculture farm. Another funding tool that we have is CASP, and that's a grant fund administered by our National Department of Agriculture that also sort of provides and helps small-scale aquaculture projects, and that is dependent on availability of funding. Other sort of structures that we have to support aquaculture farmers and small-scale aquaculture farmers includes the development of aquaculture development zones, or ADZs. So as government, we've identified various sort of zones throughout the country where aquaculture can be done. And what we've done is we will cover the environmental authorization for that. So we do a blanket authorization. For example, in Saldanha Bay, we've got one where we cover that. We also do bulk infrastructure that's needed so that your pipelines are sorted. You can just come and plug and play as a farmer or investor. Yes, so this is all overseen through our framework. So we have a oceans economy strategy. It was previously Pakisa, and now we've moved on to the master plan, the Oceans Economy Master Plan that is underway. how we facilitate sort of funding for our aquaculture farmers. We have a aquaculture development fund working group. This is where we have our various development funding institutions represented, and they sit on a quarterly basis, and we have different farmers come and present their business case. In that group, we would have your CFA and CEDA under this Department of Small Business Development, the National Empowerment Fund, IDC, and various other departments that provide funding. We've also drawn up a funding directory specifically for aquaculture, where this booklet shows you which funders you can approach. This could be your traditional banking institutions in terms of funding for aquaculture. Yes, and then in terms of feasibility, I know that WWF said that having a feasible project or business case is quite important. We have done feasibility studies for around 10 different aquaculture species. And in this sort of model, you're able to put in your species as well as a system that you're using, and you can see when you'll get your return on investment, when you'll reach sort of financial feasibility. And this is also a really great tool to take with you to financiers and investors. Yeah, so those are some of the structures and financing tools that we do as DFFE. Just checking if I missed anything. And I also look forward to the African Development Funds. They say they're going to do a program for small scale, so that would be quite interesting to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. We have a presentation next by Daniel. I don't know whether he's online in Mozambique. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm in Mozambique right now, in Maputo. I'm next to you.
Please, go ahead with the presentation.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Thanks for having us. My name is Daniel Segura. I work at ProAzul. It's the Blue Economy Development Fund of Mozambique. I work as a private sector specialist. And ProAzul is a public fund. So we are in bed in the Ministry of Sea, Inland Waters and Fisheries, but we work along with the Ministry of Finance.
So presentation in the presentation mode. Perhaps.
So you're gonna help me with this. Sorry, because I
just click out and see where there's presentation mode.
Okay, hold on a second, please. Is it still not in presentation mode, right?
No, I think, yeah, try to see if you can put it in a, but if you can't do it, just scroll down. It's okay, as long as it can move, if in case you are struggling. Or can we do?
Oh,
Okay.
sorry for this. But now it's in presentation mode?
No.
Huh? It's weird. Sorry for this. I'm not a Zoom person. Now I can see this, right?
Not quite. Okay, can we play the presentation for you from here, maybe?
Sure, I added a few slides, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let's play it from here.
Now we can go ahead.
Just continue.
Okay. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thanks again for inviting us to be part of this Congress. As I was saying, my name is Daniel Segura. I work at ProAzul, that is the Blue Economy Development Fund for Mozambique. We are a new fund which was just created in 2019. So this is our first year of track record. We are coming from the Fisheries Development Fund, but we restructure ourselves, and now we turn into a Blue Economy Fund. Just to mention a little bit what ProAzul does and what we do actually, it's a fund that we promote blue economy in Mozambique. We design and mobilize resources for blue economy projects. We also design financial mechanisms. So we conducted a few studies on innovative financial mechanisms such as blue carbon, parametric insurance, loan and credits, but with a blue border scope. And we also assist the Ministry of Sea and Waters and Fisheries and the Ministry of Finance into this new, I would say, like new scope of activity that is the blue economy. In these 3 years, something that is, I would say, like the main piece of work that is kind of linked to what we're discussing today. We finance the marine special planning for Mozambique. We finance an infrastructure master plan for fisheries and aquaculture. We designed these financial mechanisms for sustainable blue economy. That was with the World Bank through the Trust Fund Pro Blue, that for Mozambique was Mozazul. And we also approved some fishing management plans. The most important one for Mozambique is the shrimp one. Next on the slides. Today we're going to talk about, or at least we were asked to talk about small, medium enterprises and artisanal fisheries and what ProAzul is doing in this arena. So I'm just going to focus in the main social and economic coastal challenges for Mozambique that are linked to how we design our portfolio in this case. So for Mozambique, fisheries played a major role in supporting livelihoods. Mozambique is the third coastal line in Africa with 2,700 kilometers, and we are talking about a lot of households that depend on sustained fisheries. 60% of the population is located around coastal areas, and still the rural perspective is the spine of livelihoods for Mozambique, and which is really important. And some of the panelists have just been mentioning is about youth. So in Mozambique, we are talking about almost 500,000 of youth from rural areas that come into workforce every year. So that is a huge challenge. Mozambique is also challenged to be the third most vulnerable country to climate change in Africa. And when it comes to companies and to private sector, that is becoming, and to rural producers, that is becoming increasingly difficult after disaster hits. How you can be more resilient to that hits? How can you be more resilient to market demands also? We're trying to work on that, and the lack of diversification and innovation across the sector is also affecting and reducing the resilience of that communities to these climate and economic shocks. And also the gender gap in fisheries is extensive. We are talking in here like women in Mozambique, at least 70% of that, or 75% of that are involved in fisheries. but they are concentrated in substantial activities. They are not like really informal activities, and in really informal sector, they are not really empowered in this activity. So having into account these 5 major challenges for Mozambique, we designed, next slide, please. We designed like an environmental, sustainable, resilient, and social and gender inclusive livelihood portfolio. And in here, the main objectives of this portfolio was to help to relieve pressure on marine and coastal ecosystem. We have been talking about that along the day. Improve climate and economic resilience, improve or create new businesses, and contribute to empowerment of women and youth. So I'm just going to talk really briefly about some of the products that we have in ProAzul. So we have our matching grant, and I will talk a little bit more about this to improve competitiveness of fisheries and aquaculture sector. And then we have like 3 new products, new tools, I will say, in order like to overcome these challenges that we mentioned. So we have the partnership fund. So the idea of this partnership fund is to subsidize one of efforts for innovation and build long-term relationship. We have been talking about, the colleague from WWF talk about the relationship between market actors and local fishermen. So in here, what we're trying to do with the partnership fund, we are financing to create long-term relationship between companies and between artisanal fishermen. We are not financing equipment, we are not financing infrastructure, we are just financing to trust in each other, to prepare themselves, to train themselves, to get to market to market demands, and to be prepared to access to the market. That is the idea of the partnership fund. The research and pilot center, the idea in here is to a little bit like to experiment a little bit in new blue economy value change. So in here, for instance, what we're doing in here is we are trying to invest in piloting in new areas, in new value chains, such as, for instance, in aquaculture, in sea cucumber. We're financing right now piloting in the north of Mozambique. We also, when it comes to, for instance, like in fisheries, like the bycatch, how to prepare a small-scale fishing vessel to handle on board. So, for instance, we are also financing this kind of like piloting to see if they are more efficient or not, to see how local fishermen get adapted to it or not. And to have like more like a nature positive and inclusive business business ideas. Then we have like this business plan office. The idea of this business plan office is to develop robust business plan. For SMEs, the main challenge is they are not even to get access to our funding. They are not prepared sometimes to develop business plans. They are not ready to think about investment strategies or how to be linked to the market. So what we're doing with this office is to help them to design this business plan, and also to test, learn and adapt while doing this. So for instance, in this case, we are helping businesses to get new, for instance, new equipment for aquaculture, for building cages. So we are assisting them to how to draft that business plan. We are helping them and finance them to get new equipment to the country and to test it and to see if it's suitable or not suitable. If the, for instance, a small scale aquaculture are keen on those new products. We are doing also that with a fishing vessel. We are doing that with new engines for additional fishermen, for instance, too. So that is mostly a few of the products that we are having right now in-house. in order like to strengthen the value chain of fisheries and aquaculture, but also to kind of also diversifies a little bit the value chain. And now I'm going to talk about our matching grant. That is our main tool. Next slide, please. Our main tool at ProAzul, our matching grant called Match Peso Sustentable. We're talking about a 40 million program to improve fisheries competitiveness. We have like two windows. One is focused for artisanal fishers to improve fishing, storage, transport, and method, up to $25,000 US. They need to contribute with 20%, and the program is contributing with the 80% of the expenses. And in here, what is important in order like not to increase the fishing effort when it comes to fishing kits, vessels, and so on, we ask them to give back or give away their old vessel, all the not selective fishing art, in order like to get access to the new year. They also get trained. They sign a contract of sustainable use of marine resources, and they are monitoring. And they also have like kind of like traceability of the catches. But this is just a piloting that we're doing right now. And then we have like a second window that is up to $500,000 US. That is more like focused on private sector businesses. And in here, we are helping to increase the volume of pounds in aquaculture, opening of lodges in tourism sector, having more cages in aquaculture in inland waters, for instance, when it comes to fishing, building some fishing and processing plants for artisanal fishermen to the catches of them. So that is the two windows of our matching grant. The good thing of our matching grant, we have like a super buy-in of the communities. So we are using the matching grant as a tool to implement alternative or support livelihood in marine protected areas and local fishery management areas. So now we're using the matching grant as the component of those two planning tools to support alternative livelihood to local community and coastal community that is affected by these, by the MPAs and by the local fisheries management areas. We're also supporting with the matching grant sustainable activities in mangroves. So for instance, we are supporting activities such as honey in mangroves with the matching grant. So in that case, we also are doing some advocacy with the communities in order to understand that they need to protect the mangroves by developing an economic activity around them that will increase not just the resilience of the community, to understand that how they get the resilience, but also that is a long-term economic viability that they will get by protecting the mangroves. We're also using the matching grant as a strategy to increase the level of artisanal fishing licensing and registration. So for instance, you cannot apply to any of our matching grants or any of our activities if you are not licensed and if you are not registered. So also that is a good way to empower fishing community councils to have like to have revenue, so they can do monitoring and surveillance of the local fishery management plans, for instance, and to swap to more selective fishing years. So for instance, we are now designing a beach seam removal program because after 2024, Mozambique is no longer gonna license beach seams arts. So that is like a huge shock when it comes to livelihood. So we need to swap to more selective fishing years that will be financed through a matching grant, through a fund that will be inside the matching grant program. And also we need to support those communities that will be affected by the beach seam removal program with alternative livelihood. So we are now doing studies on value chains in coastal communities. So for instance, we are studying Artemia in saltworks. We are studying mud crab fattening We're also studying also poultry and tomatoes and aquaponia to produce agriculture for this community that will be affected. That will be covered in an umbrella that we call like blue alternative livelihoods, so for beach removal. But we're working on it. And we are also, when it comes to gender, that is really important. We are supporting our growers when women association linked to anchor companies.
Daniel, can you wrap up?
Sorry.
Because we are running short of time.
Yeah,
Please.
and this is the last one. We are and we find our way to have the buy-in for the need of climate insurance. So we are working on our parametric insurance to be assisting our beneficiaries of the matching grant. That was all.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for that presentation. Yesterday, we heard from the presentation by Niraj that the African Development Bank Group also works with other international development finance institutions. And therefore, I would like to call upon Dr. Harrison, who works for the World Bank. I think he's based in Washington. Harrison, are you online? Harrison?
I'm online.
Yeah, please go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe we are able to start now. I hope you can see the presentation.
Not yet.
Not yet. It should be coming. Not yet. Why is this? You are seeing it now?
No.
It's on my side. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for enabling me to be here. I really appreciate the organizers of this session. I'm going directly to jump into the presentation. We are going to talk about what the World Bank is doing in terms of enabling investments and innovation across aquatic food systems in Africa. I'm going to probably jump some of the things that are already well known in this presentation. But just to recap very quickly is that we have a situation here where we have a global increase in fish production. You can see in the graph that is quite commonly known. But Africa has been lagging behind in terms of production. And this is what we are focusing on today to see how do we ensure that Africa also can get a sufficient amount of fish. There's been a lot of importation of fish from other countries, which doesn't speak of the potential that we have in Africa. And there are quite a number of challenges that have been going across in the country, and I'll mention very few of these ones here. One of them is that we have weak governance, overfishing, and fisheries management is very poor, and therefore we are not getting the benefits that we have from the fishery in Africa. They have very many facilities that were constructed to ensure that we have good quality fish, but some of those facilities are either underutilized or they're in bad condition. The markets are not so good, and therefore quality of the fish is also compromised in many ways. Globally, the trends are that there is a very great move of aquaculture growth. Africa is also growing very quickly at the moment. Compared to other countries. Actually, it is the fastest growing in terms of aquaculture, and yet the volumes are still very, very small. And this, of course, has a big effect on Africa being able to feed itself. There are other challenges that are also affecting the aquaculture development in the continent, which I will look at very quickly. We have low productivity, which is basically a result of a lack of technological know-how and expertise. There has been a for a very long time issues of access to quality inputs, seed and feed. But of course, you know, even as in agriculture, there are also issues of getting inputs like, you know, the right feed ingredients are not are found in the continent, but there's a disconnect between the availability of ingredients and the ability to produce these good quality inputs. And therefore, we have very, very low productivity. We also have issues of climate change. We all know that Africa has been has suffered much more and is bound to suffer more as far as you know, issues of climate change impacts are concerned. We have some parts of the countries where, especially the coastal parts, where there is salinity rising in some of the areas that were freshwater aquaculture places, and this, of course, has had a very big effect on the quality of the water that is supposed to be used for this species. And there's been a need for some people to change from species to another species. Of course, also the issues of increased temperature range is affecting not only the aquaculture, but it's also affecting the fisheries part of it as well. And of course, the fish diseases are increasing, requiring a lot of effort to work on. We think that capacity building, the alternative feeds, genetic improvement programs, tackling issues of security and the use of climate smart technologies will do the job, which will enable us to be more efficiency at the farm level and also to add more value to the market. These are things that we need to do. Unless something happens here, we are projected. There have been studies that are done by some of our colleagues in WorldFish that show that Africa is projected to remain a net importer of fish unless we change the way we are doing things. So captive fisheries is not likely to be growing. We are seeing a very stagnancy there. But if that stagnancy remains, it will be fine if we can keep at least this thing the way it is. But many of the fisheries are actually going down because of lack of proper management. So there's a challenge there for us. And also the capacity per capita consumption needs to be looked at. Unless we understand the true worth of fisheries and aquaculture, it's not possible for us to really be able to move in this section, you know, to move this forward. But we have several studies that have been done to deal with this matter. We also have the changing wealth of nations that we are doing at the World Bank to contribute to the understanding of what we can get from fisheries. For the 2023, we are now looking at the fisheries and aquaculture, which has not been done before. We are expanding this to include the aspects that are very, very important for aquaculture for us to be able to understand what kind of resource do we have. We are also looking at a systematic addressing of the development challenges to ensure that we are able to deal with this big problem that we have. Of course, you know that without proper programs, it's not possible for us to be able to move this forward. So we are looking at all the aspects of this development challenge to ensure that good quality fish can be available and that is also safe. The World Bank has a program now that we are calling the Aquabusiness Investment Advisory Platform that is catalyzing growth in aquaculture, basically, because we know that aquaculture is the one that is holding the future for fisheries production. The government and public sectors are being enabled to support the private sector investment in a much better way. We are also attracting in private sector investment by involving our International Finance Corporation, the IFC, and we are looking at several areas that will help us. Several platforms here. The part of the platforms, the investment and climate change opportunities. We are looking at guidelines that we are going to be producing for sustainable aquabusiness development. We're also going to look at country case studies, advisory services that are going to be given to the private sector, and also we are focusing our efforts on the market study for seaweed. IFC have several parameters that are several instruments that are looking at private sector. These are all upstream to help the private sector to understand to understand their markets, how they can design good products and solutions. Also, we are looking at sector-wide initiatives such as country-specific interventions to unlock the markets. And we're also looking at early stage development. So we help the private sector to cover specific areas that they need to ensure that they can access the market in a good way. And of course, I mentioned this advisory services here. In detail is that we are working with the companies to strengthen them, to ensure that they reduce the operational risks and enhance sustainability and competitiveness. We have investment loans also that are available. We also work with equity, where we invest with the private sector, and we help them with the trade and commodity financing, and we also look at the structured financing, where the derivative products we use the derivative products to hedge interest rates for the companies, and to ensure that the commodity prices they have commodity price exposure for all the IFC clients. And also we also have blended financing and a range of climate and sustainable finance products, including the blue bonds, which is becoming something that is very required nowadays. We also have a WASH, and I'm going to be ending here. What we have done in the last 2 years or so, we have been working on the water sanitation and hygiene programs. I have a small video to play here. I'm not sure that we have the time for it. Let me see whether this can play. The idea is to be able to use to improve the situation in different situations for our clients.
Depend on fisheries and aquaculture for their livelihood.
I hope you can.
Harrison, we don't have much time. Perhaps you could share the clip with us, and we can circulate it here, because we've run out of time.
People can get sick.
I know that you've woken up very early there.
There is already a lot we can do to protect people. Water, sanitation, and hygiene interventions improve the quality of fish, safeguard the health of workers, and limit the spread of infectious disease.
You've seen how different organizations have placed themselves to respond to some of the challenges that this sector is facing. You hear from the African Development Bank and SADC that their programs are now focused around issues of governance, improving fisheries governance, trade and employment development, as well as food and nutrition security, and not forgetting using all these entry points to address issues of building resilience and adaptive capacities of the sector. And also, and I'm going back to the fish with the story line, that we also know that this sector can, these opportunities that this sector providing can be increased through enhanced productivity, infrastructure development, competitiveness, and increased economic returns if we look across the value chains. Hence, investments and innovations are important. And this one came out strong because it aligns very well with the sub-theme of the session that focuses on leaders in business and social innovation. Of course, this session was organized to better understand the evolution of some of the available tools, especially financial tools, issues around social innovation that are available. And the other reason was, how can then we synergize efforts as partners towards more effective and efficient investments. So there was also some showcase on some of the best available models that could be deployed. SADC made a commitment in terms of working in a partnership to scale out some of these available innovations and also be able to attract investments. Also, we brought it home on how we could link small-scale fishers to the market, and also helping with information that can be made available to improve governance. So it all comes together. But I think there was something that I felt was missing, especially when I watched the video on AFAWA. And I became jealous because a lot of social sectors grab all the available resources before the fisheries sector can be able to lay their hands on. And I think one of the things that the partnership can do is perhaps we could, as a collective, communicate some of these opportunities much better and more in a concerted effort. And I think as SAREC would like to make that commitment to work with the partners to pull together all this information, like they are doing it in South Africa, to bring all this information to the beneficiaries. It would have been good to have a discussion further, because I can see people are really burning inside. But like I said, let's use this time together to continue with the dialogue. I don't want to be the enemy of food and nutrition security, like I said. So thanks to the panel.
They have a small scale fisher speaking at a small scale fishery conference in an entire session. Small scale fishers speaking in a session for a congress for small scale fishers, and not all of these experts not speaking to small scale fisheries. This is a small scale fisheries expert.
So I think food security will have to be postponed for now. Yes.
The mic.
And I'm going to allow two people, a gentleman this side and a lady that side. Please move over to the mic. Let's start with the lady.
No problem, sir.
I want to calm you down a bit. Madam, please move. Thank you. Please go ahead. That mic is not on.
Ik kan Afrikaans praten, ik meer gemakkelijker in Afrikaans. Ik is Michelle Singh, geboren toe in Albanië als een vissersvrouw, deel van de interim relief / small scale. Het is voor mij nogal bij sad om te zien en te horen van al die dingen wat gebeurt, maar dan wordt die vissers zich betrekt daarbij niet en ik denk dat is waar wat Christian zegt. Hierdie platform was gecreëerd voor die vissers. Maar die vissers krijgen eindelijk deel en kans om hulle mening te praten. Want als ik daar denk, ons als vissers in die gemeenschappen met die inheemse kennis wordt nooit genaderd oor wat aangaan. Ik denk, ons hoor van befondsing, ons hoor van dingen wat gebeurt, maar op die ogenblik voel het van mij persoonlijk. Alles is een politieke plooi. Voor mij voelen onze landregerders als je 100% samen wat ons willen niet. En dat is een jammer dat die goeie is uitgesluit. En dat is my baie seer. Het maakt voor mij van binnenaf. Voel ik wil net weet van kleins af soos wat ons altijd geweet het as vissers in ons gemeenskappe. So ek dink dit is regverdig teenoor ons vir hoe dinge op die oomblik gebeur. Ek wil ook sê dankie vir Moniba wat dit vir ons moontlik gemaak het om deel te wees van hierdie saak.
I'm not going to translate the last part. She says that she's Michelle Singh, she's a fisherwoman from Hout Bay, and she feels that it's very sad that fishers are not, there's a lot of finances around and fishers are not really counted when it comes to their inputs in financing, and she wondered if it is a political agenda when it comes to small-scale fishers' input in that. But then I also have 2 pages that I wanted to ask questions, but I'm not.
Maniba, just follow up quickly.
about my question?
Yes, a quick one. Make it one page.
Okay. On my, I've already spoken yesterday about the disruption in terms of finance, and I really think that today I feel that there is a need to disrupt finance. There's been talk about fishing communities and all linked to investment finance and alternative finance, but it really doesn't feel that the voice of small-scale communities, critical voices, social movements are part of the decision-making of financing. We hear of all of these opportunities, but even the first one where you say, Ahmed said that there's in a few days' time you need to submit your proposal. So I think it is important that we do rethink how we finance small-scale fishers and where does the financing go to, and that the financing really need to directly go to them. That is for me critically important. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, also to the African Development Bank, and when we're speaking about investment in these startup SMEs or what it's called, what I've just seen is that the African Development Bank has funded the Petroleum Authority of Uganda to support them in linking those companies to supply larger companies. So this funding is a funding that has been given by the African Development Bank and to support the East African crude oil pipeline. This very pipeline will destroy lives and livelihoods of small-scale fishers in Tanzania, of people on the land in Uganda, in Tanzania. So you come here, you placate us with all of these beautiful pictures and all of that, but yet in the meantime, it's being done that you are giving funding to the very people that are destroying our lives. Right? This is from information from the African Development Bank's website. Okay, on the 20th of April in 2020, you said that you will give no funding to the East Africa crude oil pipeline, but on the 20th of November 2021, you approved that funding for the SMEs along the East Africa crude oil pipeline. This is a segment of this meeting about Chris, sorry, from Abalobi and all of those, the very good parts of it. It should have been done in Washington at the World Bank, not here for us as small-scale fishers. Even in the context of South Africa, in terms of aquaculture, I'd like to know the amount of small-scale aquaculture projects that have been supported and initiated by our aquaculture development program from the Department of Forestry and Fisheries. Real small-scale, not whitewash small-scale, where it is owned by INJ, by Oceana, by SIAB, and by all of these institutions. We sit here, and then the African Development Bank continues to fund the East Africa pipeline, but yet we speak about carbon credits and all of these things. There are 4,000 people killed in Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. We have people removed in Tanzania. We have small-scale fishers in South Africa whose livelihoods have been threatened for hundreds of years through colonialism, through apartheid, and now through this neoliberalism by supporting total Norway, all of these countries who love their environments, and now they want to come here, but yet the African Development Bank is supporting institutions like that. So the question for me as a small-scale fisher remains to be asked is that, are we truly serious about this support that you are speaking about? How long shall we continue to listen to the lies of our fisheries departments, our governments, the regional bodies that we have here present? And I've seen it in my lifetime. My grandfather fought for rights for fishers. How many generations must still come here, fight for rights for small-scale fishers, whilst we continue to decimate the environment around us, ensuring that you kill off an industry that has been here since time immemorial. Later this afternoon in session 3.3, you can come to the courtyard and you can listen to courtyard 1. That's where the session will be, to atrocities that has been committed by governments hand in hand with these companies that are there. So we want to ask, as the African Union, how long shall we as Africans, when we provide the majority of jobs, the only thing that we've been providing is jobs and food security, and we've done this on our own. Without investment from you as governments, without investment from the private sector. In the case of South Africa, we had to fight colonialism to exist. We had to fight apartheid to exist. We did it and we thrived. And now we must fight this new corruptocracy to exist and thrive. We have to take our government to court to get recognition as small-scale fishers. These are the things that we need to go through. And you come and here to speak about how we will be developing small-scale fisheries in the continent. And it's not happening.
I'm tempted to say Amanda to that one. But I would like to have one more burning question. One more, because I got some heat. One more, please come here. One more, and then we close. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am Faidi Mohammed, a small-scale active indigenous fisher from the West Coast. It's very interesting to see that my future, in our future, of the small-scale fishes is being discussed, while we are so not aware about it. At this present moment, we are not even included into our own constitution of our country, South Africa, to be recognized as small-scale fishers. We've been fighting for more than 17 years to be recognized as small-scale fishers. And today, for example, for the past 3 days, there's been celebration for fishers. What do we as fishers have to celebrate if we don't even be recognized as small-scale fishers? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please be short.
Goedemiddag allemaal. Ik is partner Bob en Koek van Ocean View, Kaapstad. Ik was een vrouw geboren. Ik word geen vers. En dan iets vragen en zeggen. Kijk, ons proces. We fishers are a foundation, also the establishment of the entire fishing industry. But werk bestaat wereldwijd voor allemaal. Zoals per department, met visserij voor allemaal. Ons proces. Generations back. Maar ons wordt gezien niet, ons wordt gemeasured, ons wordt gegeven wat die department decide wat er ons wordt gegeven en ons moet tevreden is. En ik denk voor jaren nou, is ons gelopen als een legacy. En als je reageert, als je weet ook niet just niet, en ik zou het meteen als emotional, maar dus ons zijn als onze foundation en de statement is van die bedrijf is, maar het is een zeer met die, moet tevreden is, het wordt gegeven wordt, en dat resultaat unjust, unfair en not right en niet. Ik ben altijd weer onze feestje van ons behoort, maar ons verdienen als die proces, die foundation, de stemming van de hele Lapische industrie, dank u.
I'm going to try and just summarize what she said. Her name is Fatima Kopikok. She's also on YouTube if you want to kind of see a link about her life story. She feels that she's a fisher woman from Ocean View. Currently she has nothing. She has problems with what has been allocated to small-scale fishers, the fact that it is generations of legacy of working in and producing food, not only for local, but also for internationally, and still not being recognized. She's asking for her fair share of fishing rights that is just, yeah, I think I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think what you are all raising are fundamental issues that I think needs to go into further discussions, be at community level, national government level. And it's good that you are raising some of these issues to some of these regional and continental and international organizations, because they have to take into consideration what is happening on the ground. Sometimes they are not even aware of some of the issues at community level, at country level. They mean well, because all that is required is for us to have proper feedback as to what are the real issues, and you are bringing them. And these are the issues that will also direct and also attempt to ensure that some of these instruments, as they are developed to respond directly to your challenges. And I'm going to give briefly Ahmed to say this word. You might not find responses today, but like I said, we continue to dialogue and we will find a common ground. Ahmed.
Thank you. I think there's a lot to learn from the idea of disruptive finance. We've had a lot in the media over the past few years about new initiatives such as Uber and others that have come up with things where they have a niche. I think as a fishing community, we have a lot to learn from agriculture. And I think we also have a lot to learn from the Japanese, because there are two things in agriculture that distinguish themselves from fisheries. There is a lot of agglomeration at the smallholder level in agriculture. There is a lot of outgrower schemes and agri-cluster, agribusiness in agriculture at the community level. And this have helped production at the local scale, at the community level, to feed people, but also to produce nationally. We haven't done that much in fisheries. The concept of having SMEs and supporting cooperatives within fisheries is exactly that. The more the merrier, the more you organize, the more you can manage your finances, the more you are strengthened in terms of the benefits, and the more you are resilient. And to be frank with you, there are many examples in the sub-region. Zambia is a perfect example. Malawi, I just came back from Malawi last week, where we have seen the training of individual fishers, individual fish harvesters working together in a group in different stages, to the point where they are registered as SMEs, to the point where they have access to finance as a commercial bank. In fact, in Malawi, almost all commercial banks have a cooperative structure to support small-scale farmers and small-scale fishers. That's a very good example we can all learn from. And I'm sure we can replicate some of these ideas in our own local communities across the continent.
It's not a business solution, sir, to a political problem. This is a governance problem, a justice problem that these fishers have raised, with all due respect.
No,
business solution is
let
not
me
a
finish,
solution.
please. Let me finish, please. I'm not getting into the political debates. I'm talking as a bank in terms of what we do, how to support small-scale fishers. I'm responding to their questions. Now, when it comes to the political conversation at the ground, we can facilitate that through dialogue. But I think it starts from understanding how we work. The mention of oil and gas and all of those is understandable. But I will tell you what, if you go to the website, the same website where you saw the data publication of the loan or grant, you also find an ESMP, an environmental and social safeguard mechanisms for all the things that are there. The bank has a grievance mechanism that is accessible to you. If there's a bank project in South Africa today, you have a problem with it, you can address it with the mechanism. Every project that the bank has a grievance mechanism and conflict resolution, where community members have the rights and they should make complaints. And we take stock of these complaints and we use those complaints as a record to help us deal with conflicts. So in other words, Dealing with conflict is part of governance. In fact, that's the theme for this. Dealing with conflict at multiple scales is part of why we are here. The reason why the bank is interested in small-scale fisheries is for us to be able to sit here, have these difficult conversations. Yeah, difficult conversations. Yeah, some of these conversations have been there way before I was born. But here we are, sitting together as friends, as colleagues, as a family, to deal with them. So on the last point, a little story about Malawi. One of the things that we're trying to do, just to make sure fisheries are sustainable, is to work with the district development plans. How many of you, this is an African company, can tell me that you can find fisheries or small-scale fisheries in a district development plan anywhere? How many of you can tell me that? Those are entry points for reforms. These are opportunities to make things different. So here we are all, we're learning from these. How do we work with district and village development plans to integrate fisheries and natural resources into their own programming so they can have their livelihoods secure, they can have the justice they require, they have the rights to access, and they also have the right to produce and serve and to eat. We are doing that. We are seeing an improvement. It's not the best, it could be better. But that's why we're here. We're here to learn, share stories, and do things differently for the better. These are my opinions, but we can talk more over lunch. As I said yesterday, we work together, we eat together, we work together, and in the end, we see a better vision. The fishery we want is the fishery you're talking about. It's not too different from yesterday. This is the fishery we want, where rights are asserted, community values are proven, and communities can survive with the little they have and do more. So with that, I think I will pass the mic to other colleagues who may want to add more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for raising those questions. I think what is happening here is reminded me an experience we had when we were finalizing the continental framework. There was a beautiful cartoon published by Masfunise in 2014, just as we are about to take the document to be endorsed by the heads of states. And that cartoon was very refreshing and it got us thinking. So I think I always cherish coming here to Cape Town and get this kind of inputs from the fishing community. So please continue with that. And I hope that this discussion can continue because that's the underpinning of the continental framework is to ensure that there's participation in their inputs. We don't stop people from talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, the panel. We are a little bit eating at our lunchtime, so we will move or postpone, or sorry, we would have a delay start of the next session. Instead of 2:15, we would make it 2:30, so that's about 15 minutes. So we can shift everything to 15 minutes. Now, do come back at 6 p.m. back to this room, because we called it Future Leader Forum for a reason, right? It is future you want that you want to hear, okay? So you come back, you can tell us what is the future that you want, and then we'll take leadership, and then we would be a bit proactive about it, and then we hope that the banks and other organizations that are ready to support small-scale fisheries do what they say they want to do, okay? But this will be the time for us to put it on the table and then go forward with that. So thanks again, everyone. Go enjoy your lunch. It's just gonna be about 1 hour, but I'm sure we can eat very quickly, and then go attend the session that will start at 2:30. Everything's moved 15 minutes. Thank you.